The history of witches can be traced back to ancient times, and throughout history, their beliefs and practices have been a subject of fascination and fear. Witches were often considered as individuals who had supernatural powers, and the church was vehemently opposed to them due to their practices and beliefs that were often considered blasphemous. The term witch comes from the Old English word wicca, which means a male witch or a sorcerer. In ancient times, witches were individuals who practiced the art of magic and had supernatural abilities. They were believed to have the power to heal the sick, control the weather, and communicate with spirits. The earliest records of witchcraft can be found in ancient Egyptian, Greek, and Roman cultures. In these cultures, witchcraft was considered a religious practice that was closely associated with the worship of the gods. In medieval Europe, witchcraft was viewed as a heretical practice, and witches were often considered as heretics. The church was opposed to witchcraft because it challenged their authority, and it was seen as a form of paganism. The church believed that witches had made a pact with the devil, and they used their powers to harm people and their livestock. This led to a widespread fear of witches, and many people were accused of witchcraft, which often resulted in their execution. The witch trials that occurred in Europe and North America between the 15th and 18th centuries are among the most significant events in the history of witches. During this period, tens of thousands of people, mostly women, were accused of witchcraft, and many were executed. The most famous witch trials were the Salem witch trials that occurred in Massachusetts in 1692. The trials resulted in the execution of 20 people, most of whom were women. The church played a significant role in the persecution of witches. The church believed that witches were heretics and that their practices were a form of blasphemy. They viewed witchcraft as a direct challenge to their authority and saw it as a threat to the Christian faith. The church actively participated in the witch hunts, and many priests and bishops were involved in the trials. The church also published books and pamphlets that warned people against the dangers of witchcraft and urged them to report any suspected witches to the authorities. The church's opposition to witchcraft was based on several factors. Firstly, the church believed that witchcraft was a form of paganism that was incompatible with Christianity. Secondly, they believed that witches were in league with the devil and used their powers to harm people and their livestock. Thirdly, the church saw witchcraft as a direct challenge to their authority, and they believed that it was their duty to eliminate it. The church's position on witchcraft was supported by several theological arguments. One of the most significant arguments was that witches were in league with the devil and that their practices were a form of idolatry. The church believed that the devil was real and that he was constantly trying to lead people away from God. They believed that witches had made a pact with the devil and they used their powers to do his bidding. Another theological argument used by the church was that witches had the power to harm people and their livestock. They believed that witches could cast spells and curses that could cause illness, infertility, and even death. The church saw witchcraft as a direct threat to people's well-being and believed that it was their duty to protect their flock from harm. In conclusion, the history of witches is a complex and fascinating one. Witches have been a subject of fascination and fear for centuries, and their beliefs and practices have been the subject of intense scrutiny. The church's opposition to witchcraft was based on several factors, including their belief that it was a form of paganism, that witches were in league with the devil.